The Stellar Pioneer was a fortress of technology, its massive hull gliding through the vacuum of deep space like a silent guardian. It had seen the edges of the known universe, navigated through star clusters where no one had ventured, and uncovered artifacts that rewrote history. Yet, as it drifted in the farthest reaches of uncharted space, the ship had never encountered anything quite like this. James Miller, a seasoned archaeologist with years of deep space exploration under his belt, stared at the holographic display before him. His hands hovered over the controls, his breath shallow as he analyzed the readings once more. The numbers, the patterns, they were impossible. A massive energy field loomed before them, its shimmering surface stretching across an entire solar system. It wasn't just vast, it was too precise to be a natural phenomenon. The sensors reported that the structure had existed for millions of years. Miller shook his head, adjusting the scanning algorithms. No way. This can't be right. He recalibrated for the 5th time. The readings remained unchanged. A chill crept down his spine. Something about this structure, this barrier, felt deliberate. Miller tapped his communicator. "Captain Rogers, you need to see this." Within moments, the soft hum of the automatic doors signaled her arrival. Captain Evelyn Rogers strode in, her uniform crisp despite the long journey. She was tall, her once dark hair now streaked with silver, a sign of years spent at the frontier of discovery. Her eyes, sharp as ever, narrowed at the projection before her. "What am I looking at?" she asked, her voice steady but tinged with something that might have been awe. Miller exhaled, trying to keep his voice level. "It's an energy field, a man-made one." Roger's eyes snapped to his. "Artificial?" He nodded. "The patterns, the structure, it's too perfect to be natural, and based on the energy decay." He hesitated before finishing. "It's been here for millions of years." Rogers stiffened. "Millions? That predates every civilization we know of," Miller said. "By a long shot." For a moment, the room was silent. The implications were staggering. No known species had existed for that long. No known race had the technology to build something of this scale. Rogers exhaled slowly. "Then whoever built this wasn't like anything we've ever encountered." Miller nodded. "And the real question is, why?" A single glance between them was enough. The Stellar Pioneer would investigate further. The discovery was about to shake the very foundations of galactic history. As the Stellar Pioneer moved closer to the edge of the energy field, the ship's instruments struggled to make sense of what lay beyond. The barrier pulsed with golden light, like the ripples of a still pond disturbed by a single drop of water. It wasn't solid, it shifted, flexed, breathed like a living thing. The ship's AI processed the data furiously. Energy composition, unknown. Purpose, unknown. Age estimate, 3.2 million years. Zheng 4, Fu 40.3 million. Rogers crossed her arms as she studied the projections. "This thing is ancient." "And that's the problem," Miller said, tapping at his console. "We've never seen anything that lasted that long without degradation. Whatever this is, it was built to endure." "But built by who?" Rogers asked. Miller hesitated, then ran his fingers through his hair. "I don't know, but I have a bad feeling that we're about to find out." As if in response, the ship's warning systems flared. The barrier pulsed, and then, for the first time in 3 million years, it reacted to something. It had detected them, and it was waking up. 3 days after the initial discovery, Miller found what he had been looking for. He had spent countless hours digging through old records, scanning ancient texts from civilizations long extinct. His eyes burned from lack of sleep, his body exhausted. Then he saw it, a single image, buried deep within the ruins of an alien archive. A crude drawing of a sphere, a perfect circle, surrounded by text written in an extinct language. Miller's breath caught in his throat. He quickly translated what little he could. The sealed star. A place where those who came before locked away something too powerful to remain free. His blood ran cold. He sprinted to the bridge, bursting through the doors. "I found something," he announced, barely able to contain the urgency in his voice. He projected the ancient text onto the main display. Rogers frowned. "Where did you find this?" "The ruins of Centauri," Miller explained. "A text thousands of years old, but it mentions this exact phenomenon, the sealed star." A silence settled over the room. "You're saying this barrier was built to contain something?" Rogers asked. Miller hesitated, then shook his head. or to protect it. The implications were terrifying. What had been locked away? And was it still in there? 3 months later, after extensive deliberation, the Galactic Council authorized an attempt to breach the barrier. 50 ships formed a wide perimeter around the designated entry point. Their collective energy beams converged, focusing on a single point in the vast wall of shimmering light. Miller stood on the observation deck, heart hammering in his chest. "If this works," Dr. Robert Stone, the lead physicist, muttered, "we'll be the first beings to set foot inside in over 3 million years." The breach device hummed to life. A sphere of energy pulsed at its core, growing brighter as it absorbed power from all surrounding vessels. Then, suddenly, a hole formed. The barrier opened, and for the first time in recorded history, the sealed solar system was revealed. As the probes rushed through the opening, Miller and the rest of the crew braced for what was to come. 8 planets, he read from the incoming data, just as we expected. But the third one, it's covered in cities. The room held its breath. "But there's no one there," Miller added, his voice hollow. The planet later identified as Earth was abandoned, perfectly preserved, a ghost world. Then they found the message. Projected from an ancient government building, it flickered on a loop. "The truth lies on Mars." A new mission was set. Within hours, a fleet of ships departed for the Red Planet, and what they would find there would change everything. The descent to Mars was eerily silent. As the Stellar Pioneer and the accompanying research vessels made their approach, the Red Planet stretched beneath them, a barren, wind-swept wasteland, untouched for millions of years. Yet, somewhere beneath the dust and rock, something had been waiting. Miller sat in the command seat of the shuttle, gripping the armrests as the automated systems guided them toward a designated landing site. The coordinates had been embedded within the message found on Earth, proof that whatever had happened here had been planned. The shuttle touched down smoothly. Outside, the reddish dust swirled in weak, intermittent gusts. The crew disembarked, their boots sinking slightly into the ancient soil. Then, the ground trembled. A low, mechanical hum reverberated through the air, and before their eyes, a portion of the Martian surface shifted. The sand parted, revealing a vast, circular hatch embedded in the rock, large enough to swallow a starship. "Jesus," whispered Dr. White, the mission's data specialist. "They left this here, waiting for us." Miller stepped forward, his scanner buzzing in his hands. The hatch was ancient, yet pristine, completely resistant to time. Symbols unfamiliar, yet strangely familiar, lined its surface. With a hiss, the hatch opened. A pathway descended into the depths of Mars, illuminated by flickering golden lights. The air that emerged was sterile, preserved by the facility's atmospheric systems. Miller took a deep breath and stepped inside. The corridor stretched far below the planet's surface, its walls adorned with unreadable inscriptions. The deeper they ventured, the more the technology around them awakened. Finally, they reached a vast, circular chamberine archive unlike anything they had ever seen. In its center stood a platform surrounded by floating holographic displays, all powered by a colossal data core embedded in the wall. The moment they stepped inside, the systems activated. A voice spoke. "Archive access granted. Welcome, successors." The walls flickered to life. Streams of information, millions of years of history, began flooding the displays. The researchers held their breath as the truth unfolded before them. The first thing the archive revealed was the origin of the Watchers. They had been the first intelligent species to evolve in the galaxy, beings of pure energy, existing across dimensions. They had watched civilizations rise and fall for billions of years, subtly guiding them, ensuring that no species advanced too quickly. But then, they found Earth. Humanity was different. Unlike other species, which followed a slow, predictable evolutionary path, humans were chaotic, unpredictable, relentless. Every time an obstacle was placed in their way, they adapted. Every crisis only made them stronger. The Watchers tried to control them. They manipulated Earth's climate, caused wars, limited resources, everything they had done to other civilizations to keep them from advancing too quickly. But it didn't work. Humans didn't just overcome every challenge. They turned their struggles into fuel for progress. Their growth wasn't linear, it was exponential. And then, something happened that had never happened before. Humans discovered the Watchers first. Not only did they see them, but they understood them. And instead of reacting with fear, They did something the Watchers never expected. They invited them to talk. The archive revealed the first meeting between humanity and the Watchers, held on Europa Jupiter's frozen moon. Commander Thomas Reed stood before beings of light, his expression calm despite facing an intelligence older than the stars themselves. "We know you fear us," he had said. "We know you've watched us. We understand why." The Watchers responded in patterns of energy, translated by the archive. "Your growth is unsustainable. If left unchecked, you will disrupt the balance of the galaxy." Reed nodded. "You're right." The Watchers hesitated. They had expected resistance, not understanding. Reed continued, "But what if the problem isn't advancement? What if the problem is advancing without wisdom?" And then, humanity proposed something no species had ever considered. They would seal themselves away, not as prisoners but as students. They would take time millions of years to evolve into something greater, ensuring that when they returned, they would be ready. But there was something else. The Watchers were afraid of humanity's adaptability, because they had realized something terrifying. They, the Watchers, the guardians of civilization, had stopped evolving. For billions of years they had remained unchanged, frozen in their perfection. But humanity, with its chaotic, relentless drive, threatened to remind them how to grow. That was the real reason the Watchers feared them, and that was the reason they agreed. The barrier was constructed not as a prison, but as a cocoon, a place where humanity could continue its evolution away from the rest of the galaxy. And when the time was right, they would return. Miller could barely process what he had just seen. His mind raced. "So they weren't locked away," White whispered. "They chose to leave. They chose to become something more." Miller nodded, his throat dry. "And now, it looks like they're coming back." The archive systems flared to life. Every screen displayed the same sequenza countdown. The barrier, which had stood for millions of years, was about to open. Alarms erupted across every research vessel orbiting the solar system. On the Stellar Pioneer's bridge, Captain Rogers watched in stunned silence as the golden energy surrounding the solar system shifted. "It's not breaking down," Stone whispered. "It's transforming." In the Mars facility, Miller and White could only stare as the entire chamber hummed with energy. The moment had arrived. And then, the barrier opened. Golden light erupted across the solar system. At first, they appeared as shimmering points, countless beings of light emerging from the depths of the transformed barrier. Then, they took shape. Their forms flickered between dimensions, vast structures of pure energy, yet still retaining something human in their essence. A voice ancient yet familiar spoke across every communication system in the galaxy. "We have watched. We have waited. Now, it is time for reunion." The Watchers appeared beside them, their forms shifting, uncertain. But there was no hostility. Humanity had returned, not as conquerors, not as destroyers, but as guides. They had spent millions of years in exile, growing, learning, preparing, and now they were ready to help the younger races of the galaxy. A new age was beginning, as the transformed humans moved through the system, reactivating long-dormant technology. Their light touched every corner of the galaxy. They had become something greater, not through war, not through domination, but through evolution. Miller stood on the surface of Mars, looking up as the sky filled with golden light. And for the first time in his life, he understood. Humanity had never been lost. They had simply been waiting to return,